For hundreds of years, people have told us that ancient people were all straight. They said that love between people of the same gender either didn't exist long ago or everyone thought it was wrong. We've believed that our ancestors lived in a world where men and women had strict roles. Men were fighters who loved women, that's it. Old-time scholars told us that any other idea was just us putting modern thoughts onto old friendships. They translated ancient writings with total confidence, thinking they knew exactly what was right and what wasn't. They had dictionaries and a thick fog of denial. That comfortable belief might be completely wrong. Tonight, you are George Smith, and it's 1872. You're bent over some clay tablets in the British Museum. Your fingers shake a little as you trace the wedge-shaped symbols. You're 32 years old. You taught yourself the ancient Assyrian language, and you've just discovered something that will change how we understand ancient literature. But there's a problem, a really big problem. The ancient poem you're translating is the oldest surviving story in human history. It seems to describe its two male heroes using the exact same words ancient Mesopotamians used for married couples. Not as a metaphor, not as a symbol. The text literally calls one man the wife of the other. And that's just the start of your problems. The tablets in front of you are covered in cuneiform writing, those special wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay over 4,500 years ago. They're the color of dried dirt. Some pieces are no bigger than your hand. Others are the size of dinner plates. Several are cracked with whole sections missing, like a jigsaw puzzle where you desperately hope the missing pieces contain something, anything that might explain away what you're reading. These aren't just any tablets, these are the proof, the undeniable evidence of a love story that came 2,000 years before the Bible. A love story between Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, and Enkidu, the wild. Man who became his husband. Yes, husband. The Akkadian word is right there, clear as day. Hiru, spouse, lover, husband. The same word used in Mesopotamian marriage contracts. You've checked 3 times. This discovery made in the dusty basement of the British Museum shows something amazing about how ancient people understood love, partnership, and human connection. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in ancient Mesopotamia. Apparently, the biggest concern about 2 men declaring their love wasn't the gender involved, but whether they'd remembered to bring enough beer to the wedding feast. But before we begin this journey together, write in the comments where you are listening from. It's fascinating to learn where in the world you are. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about ancient love, Victorian manners, and how far people will go to pretend they can't read what's right in front of them. Chapter 1. The tablet that changed everything. The year is 1872, and you, George Smith, are having what can only be described as a Victorian crisis of huge proportions. You're in the Assyrian section of the British Museum, surrounded by about 25,000 clay tablet pieces that arrived from Nineveh, the ancient Assyrian capital. These tablets were dug up by Austin Henry Layard and his helper, Hormuz Rassam. They were shipped to London in crates like the world's most important jigsaw puzzle, except nobody bothered to keep track of which pieces went together. You've been working here for years. You were originally hired to sort and clean these pieces. The museum bosses didn't expect much from you. After all, you're not a fancy scholar from Oxford or Cambridge. You're a former banknote engraver who taught yourself Akkadian by comparing the Bible to ancient writings during your lunch breaks. The established scholars look at you the way someone might look at a performing monkey who's learned to play chess. Impressive, certainly, but not quite proper. But today, none of that matters because you've just put together Tablet 11 of what will become known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. And you found the flood story, the same flood story as Noah's Ark, but written 1,500 years before Genesis. This alone would be enough to make your career, to transform you from amateur enthusiast to respected expert. You should be thrilled. You should be running through the museum halls shouting Eureka, like Archimedes in his bath. Instead, you're staring at tablet 6 with the expression of someone who's just realized they've accidentally invited both their wife and their mistress to the same dinner party. The tablet describes a scene where the goddess Ishtar, deity of love and war, asks Gilgamesh to marry her. She wants him as her husband. She promises him riches, power, and tributes from all lands. Kings will kiss his feet, his goats will have triplets, his horses will be famous throughout the land. It's the kind of offer that should make any ancient king weak at the knees. Gilgamesh's response? He basically tells the goddess of love to get lost. Not politely either. He lists every one of her former lovers and how badly things ended for them. The lion she loved, she dug him a pit. The horse condemned to the whip and spur forever. The shepherd turned into a wolf. But here's the part making, you loosen your collar. Gilgamesh's reason for rejecting her isn't that he's devoted to his kingdom or that he fears the gods, or even that he's taken a vow of celibacy. No, Gilgamesh rejects the most powerful goddess in the Mesopotamian pantheon because, and the text is remarkably clear about this, he's already taken by Enkidu, his beloved companion. Though the Akkadian uses a much stronger word, hiru. You've seen this word before in your translations. It appears in marriage contracts. It means spouse. You flip back through your notes to Tablet 1, where Enkidu is first introduced. The story describes how Gilgamesh, mighty king though he is, has become a terror to his people. He's taking brides on their wedding nights, challenging every young man to contests of strength, generally making life in Uruk about as pleasant as a tooth extraction without whiskey. The gods decide he needs an equal, someone to match his strength and temper his wildness. So they create Enkidu from clay and water. A wild man who lives with the animals, drinks at their watering holes, doesn't know what bread is or why humans wear clothes. The gods' plan to civilize Enkidu involves sending Shamhat, a temple priestess, to seduce him. For 6 days and 7 nights, she teaches him the ways of civilization, through what the text describes with surprising explicitness for something written when the pyramids were still considered modern architecture. When she's done, Enkidu can no longer run with the gazelles. The animals flee from him. He's become human. And Shamhat tells him about Gilgamesh, describing the king, in terms that would make a romance novelist blush. But here's where your Victorian sensibilities start doing gymnastics that would qualify for the Olympics if they'd been invented yet. When Enkidu finally meets Gilgamesh, they fight. Of course they fight. 2 mighty warriors testing each other's strength. Except the language used to describe their fight is unusual. They seized each other. They bent down like bulls. They shattered the doorpost and the wall shook. And immediately after this fight, they kiss and become inseparable. You've read enough ancient texts to know metaphorical language when you see it. You've also read enough to know when metaphorical language isn't metaphorical at all. The problem is you're sitting in the British Museum in 1872 in an empire where Oscar Wilde won't be imprisoned for another 23 years, but the sentiment that will jail him is already firmly in place. You can't possibly publish a translation suggesting that history's oldest hero epic is about 2 men in love. Can you? You look around the reading room. Other scholars are bent over their own texts, translating Egyptian hieroglyphs, cataloguing Roman coins, doing properly respectable archaeological work that doesn't involve accidentally discovering that the foundation of world literature is gayer than a spring day in Brighton. Sorry, you mean to think more jovial. Yes, jovial. That's a safe word. The tablet in front of you continues its story with relentless clarity. After their initial meeting, Gilgamesh and Enkidu become inseparable. They go on adventures together, slaying Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, killing the bull of heaven sent by the rejected Ishtar. Through it all, the text uses language for their relationship that mirrors exactly the language used for married couples in other Mesopotamian texts you've translated. They share a bed, not beds, plural. Bed, singular. When Gilgamesh has troubling dreams, Enkidu interprets them while they lie together. The king's mother, Ninsun, adopts Enkidu as her son, making the two men brothers legally, which in Mesopotamian law is one of the few ways to formalize a same-sex union and ensure inheritance rights. You're starting to understand why your predecessor, Henry Rawlinson, who did the initial work on these tablets, seemed to lose interest in them rather suddenly. His notes, which you've been using as reference, become increasingly sparse around these passages, where he was verbose about military campaigns and royal genealogies. He becomes mysteriously terse when describing the relationship between the two heroes. They became companions, he writes. A deep friendship was formed. Friendship. You look at the cuneiform symbols again. The word is definitely heru, spouse. You check your dictionary, still spouse. You consider whether perhaps ancient Akkadian had some alternative meaning for spouse that meant completely platonic friend, with whom one shares a bed and for whom one rejects goddesses. Your dictionary remains unhelpfully consistent. Spouse means spouse. Chapter 2. The Language of Love. Literally, 3 months have passed since your initial discovery, and you've now assembled more of the epic. Your wife wonders why you've been coming home late, looking flustered, muttering about translation difficulties. If only she knew that your difficulties have less to do with grammar and more to do with the fact that Tablet 2 contains what can only be described as Gilgamesh's mother playing matchmaker for her son and his boyfriend. The scene is remarkable in its domesticity. Ninsun, the queen mother, performs adoption rituals to make Enkidu her son. But the context makes it clear this isn't just about giving a wild man a family. In Mesopotamian law, and you've checked this against legal tablets from the same period, adopting your son's male lover as another son was a recognized way to formalize their relationship. It gave them inheritance rights, legal standing, and social recognition. It was, in essence, the ancient Near Eastern equivalent of a civil union 2,000 years before anyone coined the term. The language Ninsun uses is particularly telling. She refers to Enkidu as the one who will never forsake her son, who will be his mighty protector, his most trusted friend. But the Akkadian words carry weight that English struggles to convey. Tapu doesn't just mean friend, it means companion in the sense of a life partner. Ryu implies not just trust, but intimate knowledge, the kind that comes from sharing everything. You've been comparing these tablets to other texts in the museum's collection, hoping to find some precedent that might soften the interpretation. Instead, you've found the opposite. Love poems between married couples use identical phrases. A tablet from Sumerian times, even older than Gilgamesh, describes a bride and groom with the same words used for our two heroes. The parallels are so exact you could swap the names and no one would know the difference. There's a particularly damning, sorry you mean, interesting passage where Gilgamesh describes a dream to his mother. He sees a meteor fall from heaven and he tries to lift it, but it's too heavy. Then, and here's where your translation hand starts trembling slightly, he says, "I loved it and embraced it as a wife, and I laid it down at your feet, and you made it compete with me." Ninsun's interpretation? The meteor represents a mighty companion coming to him, one whom he will love as a wife. Those are the exact words. Ki asati, like a wife. Not like a friend, not like a brother, like a wife. You've tried alternative translations. Perhaps asati meant something different in ancient times. But no, it appears in marriage contracts, divorce proceedings, inheritance documents. It means wife. Perhaps it's metaphorical, but ancient Mesopotamian literature, when it wants to be metaphorical, usually involves gods turning into bulls or mountains having arguments. When it comes to human relationships, they tend to be remarkably straightforward. The most challenging part is Tablet 7, which you're working on today. Enkidu has been cursed by the gods for his part in killing the bull of heaven. He's dying. And the text describes Gilgamesh's grief in terms that would make Queen Victoria's mourning for Prince Albert look restrained. Gilgamesh covered his friend's face like a bride. He circled around him like an eagle. He paced back and forth like a lioness whose cubs are trapped. But it's the lament itself that stops you cold. Gilgamesh's words to the dying Enkidu use the same formulaic language found in widows' laments from the same period. You've translated enough of them to recognize the pattern, the recounting of shared experiences, the emphasis on daily intimacies, the promise of eternal remembrance. Gilgamesh talks about how they walked together, ate together, slept together. He uses the word birku, which means knee, but in context implies physical intimacy. The same word that appears in erotic poetry from Mesopotamia. You pull out your working translation of Enkidu's death scene. It reads like the most heartbreaking love story you've never wanted to discover. Enkidu on his deathbed doesn't call for priests or warriors. He calls for Gilgamesh. And his final words are about their time together, not their victories in battle, not their fame or glory, but their domestic life. The meals they shared, the dreams they interpreted for each other, the way Gilgamesh would smooth his hair. That last detail particularly bothers you. Warriors don't smooth each other's hair. You've read hundreds of ancient texts about male friendships, warrior bonds, blood brothers. None of them involve hair care. But you've read love poetry where lovers describe exactly this intimate gesture. The same verb susu, meaning to make smooth or beautiful, appears in both contexts. The real revelation comes when you finally locate and translate the Sumerian version of the epic, which predates the Akkadian version by another 1,000 years. If anything, it's more explicit. In the Sumerian text, Enkidu is described as Gilgamesh Jizgalu, which doesn't just mean male companion, but specifically denotes a masculine partner in a romantic context. It's the same term used in Sumerian texts about Thagala priests, who were third-gender priests of Inanna who took male lovers. You're beginning to realize something unsettling. It's not that you've discovered hidden gay subtext in an ancient story. It's that there's no subtext at all. It's just text. Clear, unambiguous, matter-of-fact text about two men in love. The only thing making it complicated is you, sitting in Victorian London, trying to figure out how to translate this in a way that won't end your career. Your notebook is filling with what you're calling alternative interpretations. Where the text says loved as a wife, you write cherished as a close companion. Where it says shared one bed, you note rested in the same chamber. Where Gilgamesh kisses Enkidu's lips, you suggest showed great affection. You're becoming a master of euphemism, a translator not of language, but of propriety. Chapter 3. Life in Ancient Uruk, where nobody cared. The most shocking thing about the Epic of Gilgamesh isn't that it depicts a same-sex relationship. It's that ancient Mesopotamians didn't seem to find it shocking at all. As you delve deeper into the archaeological context surrounding the tablets, you're discovering a world where the biggest concern about Gilgamesh and Enkidu's relationship wasn't the gender involved, but whether they'd properly registered their union with the temple administration for tax purposes. You've been researching life in ancient Uruk, the city where Gilgamesh supposedly ruled around 2700 BCE. The archaeological evidence paints a picture of a sophisticated urban center with about 50,000 residents, making it possibly the largest city in the world at that time. These people had writing, mathematics, bureaucracy, and apparently a remarkably practical approach to human sexuality. The tablets from Uruk's temples, which you've been cross-referencing, reveal a complex society with various types of recognized relationships. There were traditional marriages between men and women, of course, primarily focused on producing heirs and managing property. But there were also Naditu women, priestesses who took no husbands but could have female companions. There were Agala priests, whom you're having particular difficulty describing in your official notes. The Sumerian texts are quite clear that these priests, devoted to the goddess Inanna, lived as women and took male lovers. Their existence wasn't hidden or shameful. They performed important religious functions and were paid by the temple bureaucracy. Their wage receipts are right there in the archaeological record, clear as day, provisions, for the Gala priest and his husband. Husband, that word again. You're realizing that ancient Mesopotamians had words, specific, technical, legal words, for various types of same-sex relationships. Gizgalu referred to temple personnel who were assigned male at birth, but lived as women. Asinu denoted another category of gender-variant priests. These weren't slurs or euphemisms, they were job titles that appeared on official documents. You found a tablet that's essentially an HR complaint from 2500 BCE where someone protests their Gala colleague getting better rations. The domestic details in the epic make more sense in this context. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu share a bed, it's not remarkable because lots of people in ancient Uruk shared beds. Real estate was expensive even then, and private bedrooms were a luxury, but the text specifically mentions them sharing a bed in the palace, where Gilgamesh, as king, certainly had access to multiple rooms. It's a choice, not a necessity. You found a particularly illuminating tablet from a few centuries after Gilgamesh's supposed reign. It's a legal document about inheritance disputes, and it mentions, almost in passing, provisions for when a man takes a man as a spouse for love rather than children. The matter-of-fact tone suggests this was uncommon, but not unheard of, requiring a specific legal framework, but not moral condemnation. The main concern seems to be who inherits what if there are no biological children, not whether the relationship should exist at all. The religious context is equally revealing. Inanna Ishtar, the goddess who propositions Gilgamesh, was herself a deity of transformation and boundary crossing. Her myths involve her descending to the underworld, switching genders, and taking both male and female lovers. Her temples employed people of various genders and sexualities. In this context, her rejection by Gilgamesh takes on additional meaning. He's not just choosing Enkidu over her, he's choosing a type of love that exists outside her domain of procreation and fertility. You're particularly struck by a hymn to Inanna you've translated where she says, "When I sit in the alehouse, I am a woman, and I am an exuberant young man. When I am present at a place of quarrelling, I am a woman, a perfect young man. When I sit by the gate of the tavern, I am a prostitute familiar with the penis, the friend of a man, the girlfriend of a woman." The goddess herself embodies sexual and gender fluidity. Why would her worshippers be any different? The everyday life details in the epic reflect this reality. When Enkidu is dying, Gilgamesh doesn't hide his grief or moderate it for propriety. He tears his clothes, pulls out his hair, weeps publicly. The citizens of Uruk don't seem surprised by the intensity of his mourning. They join in. The text describes the entire city lamenting with their king, not questioning why he grieves so deeply for this particular companion. You found references to public mourning rituals from ancient Mesopotamia, and Gilgamesh's behavior follows the exact pattern expected of a bereaved spouse. The tearing of clothes, the covering of the face, the refusal to wash or eat. These are all documented mourning practices for widows and widowers. If Gilgamesh's grief seemed excessive to ancient audiences, surely some version of the epic would mention it. Instead, every version, from the oldest Sumerian fragments to the standard version from Ashurbanipal's library, treats his mourning as entirely appropriate. There's a scene after Enkidu's death that particularly haunts you. Gilgamesh commissions a statue of his friend, and the description is lovingly detailed. He uses the finest materials, gold, silver, lapis lazuli. He ensures every feature is captured perfectly. This isn't unusual. Mesopotamian rulers often commissioned statues. What's unusual is that he places it in his bedroom, not in a temple, not in a public square, but where he sleeps. The archaeological record from Uruk shows evidence of private memorial statues, and they're almost always of spouses or children, not friends. You're also noticing something about the way sex and relationships are discussed in Mesopotamian texts generally. They're remarkably frank about physical matters that would make a Victorian faint. There are medical texts about sexual dysfunction, legal texts about adultery, religious texts about sacred prostitution. But none of them treat same-sex relationships as a separate category requiring special explanation or condemnation. When they appear, they're just another variation of human behavior, like preferring beer to wine or wearing your hair long instead of short. The one text you found that could be interpreted as negative towards same-sex relationships is a Middle Assyrian law from several centuries after Gilgamesh. It prescribes punishment for a man who spreads false rumors that another man allows himself to be used by men. But even this seems more concerned with slander and consent than with condemning the practice itself. The same law code has provisions for male temple prostitutes, suggesting the issue wasn't same-sex relations, but rather false accusations about someone's sexual role. Chapter 4. The Victorian Translation Circus. It's now 1875, and your translation of the Epic of Gilgamesh has been published to great acclaim. You're being celebrated as the man who found the flood story, the archaeological proof of biblical truth. What you're not being celebrated for is your creative interpretation of certain passages, the linguistic gymnastics you performed to make the text palatable to Victorian society. Your original notes, the ones you keep locked in your desk drawer, tell a very different story from the published version. Take, for example, the passage where Gilgamesh dreams of embracing the meteor as a wife. In your published translation, this becomes, "I was drawn to it as though to a woman." Technically not wrong, but you've shifted active embrace to passive attraction, and wife has become woman, implying perhaps Gilgamesh was simply noting the meteor's feminine qualities. Very interested in geology, that Gilgamesh. Your colleague, Professor Archibald Sayce at Oxford, has taken your translation and gone even further. In his lectures, Enkidu becomes Gilgamesh's servant, then his retainer, and finally his boon companion. The bed they share becomes quarters, then a dwelling. And in Sayce's most recent paper, they're apparently in separate tents. It's fascinating to watch the physical distance between the two heroes expand with each retranslation, as if Victorian propriety requires them to be gradually moved apart, like furniture being rearranged by an increasingly prudish interior decorator. The German scholars are having their own struggles. Julius Oppert in Paris has decided that certain tablets are too damaged to translate, particularly those describing the hero's domestic arrangements. Remarkable how the clay always seems to crumble exactly where things get intimate. Paul Haupt in Leipzig has produced a translation where Gilgamesh and Enkidu barely touch, their love transformed into a sort of vigorous handshaking. Enthusiasm. They grasped hands appears about 40 times in his version, replacing every embrace, caress, and kiss in the original. But the real acrobatics come from your own institution, the British Museum. The new curator, E.A. Wallace Budge, has decided that the epic needs to be made suitable for general readers. His version, which will become the standard English translation for the next 50 years, performs miracles of transformation. Enkidu's death scene, where Gilgamesh covers his face like a bride, becomes covered him with a veil. The love as strong as that for a wife becomes regard as for a brother. Every Hiru, spouse, becomes friend. Every kiss becomes greeting. Every embrace becomes salutation. You've watched this happen with a mixture of relief and shame. Relief because your career is safe, your reputation intact. Shame because you know what the tablets really say. You know that you're participating in the erasure of something that survived 4,500 years, only to be buried again under Victorian propriety. The French are being slightly more honest, or perhaps just more French. François Lenormand has published a translation that keeps some of the romantic language but suggests it's all metaphorical, representing the relationship between civilization, Gilgamesh, and nature, Enkidu. He writes lengthy footnotes explaining how ancient peoples used marriage metaphors for all sorts of relationships that weren't really marriages. He doesn't explain why these metaphors only seem to apply to same-sex pairs, or why different metaphors are used for actual friendships in the same texts. The most absurd situation involves the tablet describing Enkidu's creation and civilizing. The temple priestess Shamhat spends 6 days and 7 nights teaching Enkidu about human sexuality. The original text is explicit enough to make Ovid blush, but in the Victorian translations, she's teaching him the ways of mankind, showing him civilized behavior, helping him understand human customs. One particularly creative translator suggests she's teaching him table manners for a week. Must have been very complicated, table manners. You've been corresponding with other Assyriologists about these translation choices, and the letters are masterpieces of coded language. The passage presents certain difficulties means this is obviously gay. The cultural context requires careful consideration, translates to, how do we explain this away? Further study is needed means let's hope everyone forgets about this part. There's one scholar, though, who seems to understand what's really going on. A young man named Edward Carpenter has written to you asking for clarification about certain passages. His questions are precise. His understanding of the Akkadian, surprisingly good for an amateur. He wants to know about the original words, the exact terms used. You suspect he knows exactly what he's looking for. You send him carefully neutral responses, but include, perhaps accidentally, page numbers to your original notes in the museum archives. If he happens to look them up, well, that's scholarly diligence, isn't it? The irony doesn't escape you that you're treating these tablets the same way Gilgamesh treated Ishtar, rejecting the obvious truth in favor of something more personally comfortable. The goddess of love standing right there offering herself. And Gilgamesh says, "No thank you, I have Enkidu." The text, clear as cuneiform can be, saying these men loved each other as spouses, and Victorian England says, "No thank you, they were very good friends." You think about the scribes who copied these tablets over and over for thousands of years. Did any of them hesitate at these passages? Did some ancient Babylonian scholar, working by oil lamp in a temple library, consider changing husband to companion? The evidence suggests not. Every version, from every period, maintains the same language, the same emotional intensity, the same unambiguous relationship. It took Victorian England to accomplish what 3 millennia of ancient scribes wouldn't do: make Gilgamesh and Enkidu straight. Chapter 5. What the ancients actually thought. The year is now 1876, and you've been invited to give a lecture at the Royal Asiatic Society about your discoveries. What you plan to say and what you want to say are 2 entirely different speeches. You'll talk about the flood narrative, the historical verification of biblical events, the importance of cuneiform studies. You won't talk about what you've discovered in the past year, that the Epic of Gilgamesh wasn't unique in its depiction of same-sex love, but part of a broader ancient Near Eastern literary tradition that treated such relationships as unremarkable. You've been translating other texts from the same period and region, and they paint a consistent picture. The Sumerian myth of Inanna's descent mentions her gatekeeper Ninshuber, described in terms that parallel Enkidu's relationship to Gilgamesh. When Inanna descends to the underworld, Ninshuber's grief follows the same pattern as Gilgamesh's mourning. The gender is different. Ninshuber is sometimes described as female, sometimes as neither male nor female, but the emotional vocabulary is identical. There's a Babylonian text about 2 men named Atutaru and Ituya that reads like a legal document but tells a love story. They enter into a brotherhood contract that gives them inheritance rights to each other's property. The language is formal, legalistic, but between the lines about sheep and barley fields, there are provisions for care and illness, support in old age, burial together. It's essentially a marriage contract with a different header. You found Egyptian texts too, from roughly the same period. The tomb of Khnumhotep and Niankhnum, royal manicurists to the pharaoh, shows them in poses typically reserved for married couples. Their names are joined with the same hieroglyphs used for husband and wife. When Victorian archaeologists discovered it in 1964, oh wait, you won't live to see that, but you've seen similar depictions in papyri in the museums. Collection, carefully catalogued as brothers or close friends, despite the intimate poses that would be scandalous if one figure were female. The Hittite laws, which you've been struggling through with your limited knowledge of their language, have provisions for various types of unions. There's one passage about inheritance rights for a man who lives as a woman and their partner. The matter-of-fact tone suggests this was just another category to consider in property law, like provisions for widows or orphaned children. But it's a letter you found that really stops you in your tracks. It's from Mari, a city on the Euphrates, dated to around 1750 BCE. A man writes to another man, "I have heard you have taken another lover. My heart is broken like a pot dropped from the wall. Remember the oaths we swore in the temple of Dagon. Remember the feast where you called me your only one. I wait for your return like the fields wait for rain." The letter is signed with a seal showing 2 figures embracing. The museum catalogue lists it as correspondence between business partners regarding a trade dispute. You've started to notice patterns in how these relationships were integrated into society. They often involved adoption ceremonies, brotherhood contracts, or religious roles that provided legal framework. It wasn't that ancient societies were more tolerant. They had plenty of strict rules about sexuality, but their rules were different from Victorian ones. They cared about social status, about active versus passive roles, about producing heirs for property inheritance. They didn't seem to care about gender in the way your society does. The religious aspect is particularly fascinating. Many of these relationships appear in religious contexts: temple personnel, priests, devotees of particular deities. The Gala priests of Sumerian temples, the Asinu of Ishtar's cult, the Kogaru of Ishtar in later periods. These weren't marginal figures, but integral parts of religious life. They performed essential rituals, particularly those involving liminality, transformation, and mediation between worlds. Their existence suggests that ancient people saw gender and sexuality as more fluid, more connected to the divine mystery of existence. You think about Enkidu's role in the epic. He's created by the gods as Gilgamesh's equal, his match, his other half. The Mesopotamian concept of samahum, the state of being someone's other half, appears in their creation myths too. The gods are often paired, not always in male-female combinations. There's a theological implication here that makes your head spin. If the gods themselves embody various forms of love and partnership, then human diversity in love reflects divine diversity. The most striking thing is how these texts handle the death of one partner. The grief is always profound, always recognized as legitimate. No one in these ancient texts says, "Why do you mourn so deeply for just a friend?" The depth of love is acknowledged, honored, even celebrated. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality after Enkidu's death isn't seen as excessive, but as the natural response to losing one's other half. You found one text that might be the key to understanding all of this. It's a wisdom text, the kind of philosophical writing Mesopotamians loved, full of advice about living a good life. One passage reads, "Love comes in many forms, like the faces of the gods. The farmer loves his field, the merchant his silver, the king his power, and some men love men as others love women. Each follows the path the gods have set before them. Judge not the love, but the virtue of the lover. Judge not the love, but the virtue of the lover." You sit with that phrase, wondering what your world might look like if it embraced such philosophy. Chapter 6. The Love That Survived. 5 millennia. You're dying. It's 1876, and you've contracted dysentery while working on yet another translation in the museum's inadequately heated rooms. You're 36 years old, younger than Enkidu when he died, though the epic doesn't give his exact age. As you lie in your bed, fever making the ceiling swim like cuneiform tablets floating in water, you think about what you've discovered and what will happen to it after you're gone. Your official translation of Gilgamesh is already being treated as the definitive version. Schools will teach it, scholars will cite it. For the next century, maybe longer, people will read your careful euphemisms and never know that history's oldest love story was exactly that, a love story. You've preserved the epic and buried it at the same time, like an archaeologist carefully resealing a tomb. But you've also left clues. Your original notes, filed in the museum archives under supplementary materials, Assyrian translations, Smith, G, contain the true translations. Every Hiru marked as spouse, every intimate gesture faithfully recorded. You've written in pencil, knowing it will fade, but hoping someone someday will find these notes and understand what you couldn't say aloud. The story of Gilgamesh and Enkidu will survive, you realize, the way it has always survived. Not in its full truth, perhaps, but in fragments, in hints, in the spaces between words where love lives, regardless of translation. Someone will read even your sanitized version and recognize the grief that consumes Gilgamesh. They'll see themselves in his desperate quest to bring Enkidu back, his refusal to accept that death could separate them, because that's what strikes you most about this epic. Lying here with your own mortality pressing close. It's not really about being gay or straight or any category your Victorian world insists upon. It's about love so profound that losing it breaks you. It's about finding someone who matches you so perfectly that the gods themselves must have designed them for you. It's about the human need to be known completely by another person. Gilgamesh doesn't seek immortality for glory or power. He seeks it because a world without Enkidu isn't worth living in. When he fails, when the plant of immortality is stolen by a serpent, he returns to Uruk and does the only thing he can. He tells Enkidu's story. He inscribes it on tablets of stone, ensuring that even if Enkidu cannot live forever, their love will. And it has. Through the fall of Babylon, the rise and fall of empires, through Alexander's conquest and Rome's decline, through the burning of libraries and the burial of cities, these tablets survived. They survived because countless scribes, for reasons we'll never fully know, kept copying them. Did some of those scribes see themselves in this story? Did they carefully press each cuneiform wedge, thinking, "This matters, this must be preserved"? You think about the Victorian world that cannot accept what these tablets say. In your lifetime, men like you, scholars, writers, artists, speak in codes and metaphors about feelings they cannot name. They form passionate friendships and Boston marriages and romantic companionships, dancing around words that Mesopotamians wrote plainly 4,600 years ago. The irony is sharp enough to cut. Ancient peoples you've been taught to see as primitive had words for loves that your advanced civilization cannot speak. But perhaps that's always how it works. Perhaps every age thinks itself the pinnacle of enlightenment while carefully forgetting what previous ages knew. The Mesopotamians understood that love comes in many forms. They built legal structures around it, celebrated it in their holiest texts, carved it into stone that would outlast their civilization. Your age, for all its steam engines and telegraphs, has forgotten this wisdom. You wonder, who will rediscover it? Maybe in 50 years, maybe in 100, someone will. Sit where you sat, hold the same tablets you held, and translate them honestly. They'll publish what you couldn't. They'll point out that friend was never the right word, that all the Victorian circumlocutions were just that, dancing around a truth as solid as stone. The epic of Gilgamesh ends with the hero returning to Uruk, to the city he rules, to the walls he built. He has failed to resurrect Enkidu, failed to achieve immortality, failed in every quest except one. He has ensured their story will be told. The last lines of the epic describe the city's walls, their foundation of burnt brick, their 7 layers of bitumen. These walls, the text tells us, will last forever. They didn't, of course. Uruk is ruins now, sand and broken brick. But the story inscribed on tablets survived longer than those mighty walls. Love, it seems, makes a more lasting monument than stone. You think about leaving one more note, something for that future translator who will find your archives. You want to tell them that you knew, that you saw the truth, even if you couldn't speak it. You want to apologize for your cowardice and explain your constraints. But your hand is too weak now, the fever too high. Instead, you close your eyes and think about 2 men in ancient Uruk, sharing a bed, sharing a life, sharing a love that your entire Victorian civilization couldn't successfully erase. Somewhere in the British Museum, in a climate-controlled room that doesn't exist yet, the tablets wait. The real words are still there, pressed into clay before the pyramids were built, before Moses, before Christ, before all the civilizations that would try to forget what kinds of love are possible. Hiru, you whisper to the empty room. Spouse, lover, husband. The word that survived 5,000 years will survive a few decades more. As our journey through the Epic of Gilgamesh and its Victorian burial concludes tonight, we are reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. Until our next archaeological adventure together, this is the stone-wrought historian encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history. But for now, stay tuned as we have a bonus story coming right up, read especially for you by our guest narrator.
Bonus story. Archaeology that rewrote the Middle Ages and proves your history teacher was wrong. Let's be honest for a moment. When you think of the Middle Ages, what's the first image that comes to mind? It's probably mud. Lots of mud, followed by miserable people in drab gray, potato sack-adjacent clothing, trudging through said mud, occasionally stopping to die of something unpleasant and difficult to pronounce. The whole 1,000-year-long period has been branded as the Dark Ages, a sort of historical layover between the glories of Rome and the genius of the Renaissance. It's the historical equivalent of a Tuesday morning in February. We imagine it as a time of profound ignorance, where the height of fashion was not getting tetanus from your tunic and the peak of technology was figuring out which end of the pitchfork was the pointy one. This grim, colorless vision of the past is one of history's most successful and most misleading marketing campaigns. It's a convenient narrative, tidying up 1,000 years of complex human experience into a neat little box labeled generally awful. We've been told this story so many times, in movies, in books, and even in classrooms, that we've come to accept it as fact. We picture a world devoid of beauty, sophistication, or even a basic understanding of how to make a decent shirt. It was, we are led to believe, a world without style. That idea is completely wrong. Tonight, you are standing on the edge of the world, or at least what feels like it. It is the late 14th century, and you are a Norse woman living in the eastern settlement of Greenland. The wind that whips across the fjord has a bite that feels personal, a constant reminder that you live at the mercy of the ice. Survival here is a full-time job with mandatory overtime and no benefits. But you are not just a survivor. You are a creator, a designer, a woman of taste and skill. And in your hands, you hold a needle, a thread of spun wool, and a piece of deceptively simple, diamond twill fabric that you are transforming into a garment that would make a Parisian couturier nod in grudging respect. You are part of a community that, against all odds, and in one of the harshest environments on Earth, had a distinct and sophisticated fashion culture. The proof of your existence, the receipts of your life's work, were found nearly 600 years later, frozen solid in the churchyard at Herjolfsnes. Archaeologists in the 1920s, expecting to find crudely stitched hides, instead unearthed a collection of perfectly preserved woolen garments. These weren't shapeless robes, they were tailored, form-fitting gowns, pleated hoods with ridiculously long decorative tails, cowled pipes, and even stockings for children. It was like finding a vintage clothing boutique locked in a deep freezer. The stitching was so fine, the cut so complex, and the style so clearly in conversation with mainland European trends that it forced a complete rewrite of what we thought we knew about medieval life on the fringes of civilization. This discovery, made in a forgotten Norse graveyard in Greenland, reveals something extraordinary about medieval resilience, trade, and the universal human desire to not just survive, but to do so with a bit of flair. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in a world far more colorful, complex, and connected than we ever imagined. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about the Middle Ages. Our first stop on this journey is with you in Greenland. Let's get a feel for your world. The air is so clean it almost hurts to breathe, and the silence is a physical presence, broken only by the cry of a seabird or the deep, groaning crack of a distant glacier. You live in a longhouse, its thick turf walls providing a surprising amount of insulation against the relentless cold. The central fire pit is the heart of your home. Its smoke a constant stinging perfume that clings to your hair and clothes. It's the smell of safety, of warmth, of community. You share this space with your extended family and, depending on the season, a few of your more valuable livestock who are smart enough to want to be inside too. Privacy is a concept that hasn't been invented yet. Your days are governed by the seasons, a relentless cycle of light and dark. In the summer, the sun barely dips below the horizon, and life is a frantic rush to hunt, fish, and gather enough resources to see you through the long, crushing winter. You and the other women in your settlement spend weeks preparing seal skins, scraping them clean of blubber, a slick, greasy task that leaves your hands numb, but promises warm boots and waterproof gear. You shear the sheep, their wool coarse and lanolin rich, the raw material for the very fabric of your life. The men return from the hunts, their boats laden with seal and walrus, the currency of your colony. Walrus ivory and hides are traded with the occasional ship from Norway or Iceland for the things you cannot make yourself. Iron for tools, a bit of grain for a rare loaf of bread, and maybe, if the year was good, a bolt of colored cloth or a few precious glass beads. But it is in the long, dark winter that your other life begins. With the sun a pale memory, and the world outside locked in ice, the longhouse becomes a workshop. The flicker of seal oil lamps cast dancing shadows on the walls as you sit with the other women, your hands never idle. This is where your true artistry comes to life. The garment you're working on now is a gown, a kirtle, for yourself. You're not just sewing two pieces of cloth together. You are engineering a piece of clothing. You've cut the main body from a single piece of woven wool, but you've inserted triangular pieces of fabric called gores into the sides and front. This is a clever bit of tailoring that allows the gown to fit snugly across your shoulders and bust, before flaring out dramatically at the hem. It's efficient, wasting almost no precious fabric, but it also creates a silhouette that is elegant and allows for ease of movement. It's practical, yes, but it's also undeniably fashionable. You hold it up, checking the seam you just stitched. Your needle is made of bone, polished smooth from years of use. Your thread is hand-spun wool, so fine and strong it's a testament to hours of patient work with a drop spindle. The stitches are tiny, almost invisible, a line of perfect, disciplined knots that will hold this seam together for a lifetime, and then some. You smile, a private, satisfied little expression. Your neighbor is working on a hood, one of those with the long, trailing liripipe. Last year, the fashion was to have it hang just to the small of your back. This year, the rumor that came with the last trading ship is that the tails are getting longer, almost ridiculously so. It's a playful, peacocking kind of status symbol. It says, I have so much extra fabric and time that I can afford to have this completely useless but very stylish tail dangling from my head. It's the 14th century equivalent of buying a smartphone with a camera you'll never use to its full potential. These clothes are your identity. They mark you as a Norse woman, distinct from the native Inuit people, that Skraelings, with whom you have a tense and infrequent relationship. They connect you to a European homeland you've only heard about in stories. The style you're emulating, this fitted waist and flared skirt, is called accodardi. It's all the rage in the royal courts of England and France, a fact you know only through sketches and descriptions passed along by traders. You're taking the high fashion trend from thousands of miles away and adapting it using local materials and techniques. You're not just surviving in the Arctic. You're participating in global culture, albeit with a significant time delay. It's like waiting for a season of a popular TV show to finally arrive on your region's streaming service months after everyone else has seen it. The archaeologists who found your clothes in that frozen cemetery were stunned. The acidic Greenlandic soil should have destroyed them, but the permafrost acted like a time capsule. They found 30 complete garments, along with hats, stockings, and shoes. They saw the careful repairs, the patches sewn over worn elbows, a testament to how valuable these items were. They saw the fashionable details, the pleats and gores that spoke not of desperation but of pride. They even found small crosses stitched into the clothes of the dead, a quiet, intimate expression of faith. Your simple, elegant gown, buried with you in the cold earth, became a powerful counter-narrative. It proved that even on the furthest edge of the medieval world, people cared about beauty, they cared about dignity, and they certainly didn't dress like they were wearing potato sacks. This fashion, this culture was a candle of defiance against the encroaching dark and cold, a candle that, as the climate worsened and the ships from Europe stopped coming, would eventually, tragically, be extinguished, but not before leaving behind proof that you were here, and you were fabulous. Now we must leave the icy shores of Greenland and travel south, and a few decades back in time. The world you're about to enter is louder, smellier, and infinitely more crowded. The year is 1349. Tonight, you are not a fashion designer. You are a clerk for the City of London, and your job has recently taken a rather morbid turn. You stand on a patch of ground just east of the city walls, a place that until last year was a pleasant open field known as East Smithfield. Now it is a scene of organized, nightmarish efficiency. You are overseeing the digging of a new plague pit. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, sweat, and the cloying sweet scent of death, which no amount of quicklime can ever truly mask. All around you, the rhythmic scrape of shovels against soil provides a grim percussion to the distant tolling bells of 100 city churches, each one marking another soul departed. The stereotype of the Black Death is one of chaos. We imagine panicked mobs, bodies piled in the streets, a total collapse of social order as a mysterious, terrifying disease scythed through the population. And while there was undoubtedly terror and chaos, the archaeology of places like East Smithfield tells a different, more surprising story. It's a story not of collapse, but of a desperate, determined attempt to maintain order and dignity in the face of the apocalypse. Your job is a testament to that. You aren't just randomly tossing bodies into a hole. You have a ledger, its pages already filling up with names or descriptions if a name is not known. You are part of a civic response. King Edward III himself purchased this land and ordered it consecrated specifically for this purpose. This isn't a panicked reaction, it's emergency infrastructure. You watch as a cart, pulled by a weary-looking horse, creaks to a halt at the edge of the pit. The driver, his face covered with a vinegar-soaked cloth, a useless but psychologically comforting gesture, begins to unload his grim cargo. The bodies are wrapped in simple woolen shrouds. This is important. Despite the overwhelming numbers, people are not being discarded. They are being buried as properly as circumstances allow, in consecrated ground. As the workers carefully lower the bodies into the pit, you see how they are arranged. They are placed in neat, orderly rows, head to toe, packed as tightly as possible to maximize space, but with a clear sense of purpose. There is a terrible, heartbreaking neatness to it all. This is not the work of a society that has given up. This is the work of a society that is trying, with every last ounce of its strength, to follow the rules, to honor its dead even as it is being systematically dismantled from within. You look down at the vast open trench. The archaeologists who will one day excavate this site will find multiple layers of these burials, separated by thin layers of soil. They will calculate that up to 2,400 individuals were interred here in a matter of months. They will see that the first burials were in individual graves, a hopeful sign that people believed this would be a manageable crisis. Then, as the death toll skyrocketed, the mass trenches began. It's a story told in layers of earth and bone, a story of hope giving way to grim reality. Your reality. You shiver, and it's not from the evening chill. You don't understand what is causing this pestilence. The prevailing theory involves miasma, or bad air, a punishment from God, or perhaps an unfavorable alignment of the planets. The idea of microscopic organisms is centuries away, a concept as fantastical as a flying machine. All you know is that it spreads like fire, that yesterday's healthy neighbor is today a shrouded corpse, and that your own cough feels more menacing with each passing hour. The true revolution in understanding your world wouldn't come from counting the skeletons, but from what was hidden inside them. In the 21st century, scientists would carefully drill into the teeth of the skeletons from your plague pit. The tooth pulp, protected by the hard enamel, can preserve ancient DNA for centuries. There they found it, the genetic signature of Yersinia pestis. It was the killer, caught red-handed. By sequencing its entire genome, they were able to create a family tree for the plague. They proved that this London strain was an ancestor to nearly all modern forms of the plague, a sort of Big Bang moment for the disease's spread across Europe. They could even trace its likely origin back to a single outbreak in Central Asia. You, in 1349, are standing at a crucial node in a global pandemic, the scale of which is almost unimaginable. What this discovery also did was shatter the myth that medieval people were simply passive victims. The organized burials, the legal frameworks for dealing with the property of the deceased, the desperate attempts at quarantine, all of it points to a society fighting back with the only tools it had: order, ritual, and bureaucracy. You, the clerk with your ledger, are a quiet hero of this story. You are trying to keep the record straight, to ensure some small measure of identity is preserved for those who have lost everything. Your work is a small act of defiance against the overwhelming anonymity of mass death. You dip your quill in the inkpot, the scratchy sound loud in the twilight. You write another name. You record a location. You are imposing a fragile human order on an inhuman disaster. And doing so, you are proving that even at the end of the world, someone is still trying to do the paperwork. A profoundly human and profoundly medieval response to catastrophe. Now let's leave the somber world of plague-ridden London and travel further back to a time of warriors and kings, of gold and glory. The air here is different. It smells of wood smoke, wet earth, and old iron. The year is sometime in the late 7th century. The kingdom you're in is Mercia, one of the great powers of Anglo-Saxon England. Tonight, you are not a clerk or a seamstress. You are a warrior. But you are not on a battlefield. You're on a small hill in the middle of a vast empty field, miles from any known settlement. And you are burying treasure, not just a few coins. You are burying a king's ransom in exquisitely crafted battle gear and gold. Before you are dozens of leather bags, heavy with their contents. You reach into one and pull out a sword hilt, or what's left of one. The blade is gone. The organic grip rotted away, but the metal components glitter in the moonlight. The pommel is a marvel of craftsmanship, a golden mushroom shape, intricately decorated with blood-red garnets set in a delicate honeycomb of gold cells. This technique is cloison, and it requires a level of skill that seems almost magical. You run your thumb over the surface. It's smooth yet complex. You see stylized animals, serpents, and birds of prey woven into the designs, their forms twisting and interlocking in a dizzying, beautiful dance. This isn't just a weapon part. It's a work of art, a symbol of immense power and prestige, and you are about to put it in the ground. Why? That's the question that will haunt archaeologists for more than 1,000 years. The collection you are burying will one day be known as the Staffordshire Hoard, and it will completely upend the idea of the Dark Ages as a time of brutish ignorance. The treasure consists of over 4,000 items, almost all of them military in nature. There are more than 90 sword pommels, hundreds of hilt fittings, and pieces of stunningly decorated helmets, including cheek guards with intricate filigree work, tiny golden wires twisted into delicate patterns. It is 10 pounds of gold and 3 pounds of silver. But what's most striking is what isn't here. There are no coins, no pots, no jewelry for women. This is a very specific, curated collection of warrior bling. It is the spoils of war, stripped from the weapons of defeated enemies. Each piece tells a story of a battle fought, a life taken, a kingdom humbled. You carefully place the pommel back in its bag. Perhaps you are part of a defeated army, burying your treasure to keep it from the enemy, hoping to one day return and retrieve it, a day that never came. Or perhaps you are the victor, and this is a ritual offering, a gift to the gods in thanks for your success on the battlefield, a way of taking this blood-soaked, powerful metal out of circulation forever. Or maybe, just maybe, this is the Mercian equivalent of a royal treasury, buried for safekeeping during a time of political turmoil. You don't have a Gringotts bank to store your valuables. A hole in the ground in the middle of nowhere is the next best thing. No one knows the real reason, and that mystery is part of its power. You are the keeper of a secret that will die with you. As you work, digging the hole deeper, you think about the men who carried these items. An Anglo-Saxon lord's identity was tied up in his weapons. His sword was his soul, an extension of his will. To have it stripped like this in defeat was the ultimate humiliation. The men who made these objects were not clumsy blacksmiths. They were master craftsmen with access to materials from far and wide. The garnets likely came from as far away as India or Sri Lanka, traded across thousands of miles to end up on a sword hilt in the English Midlands. This tells you that your world is not an isolated, muddy backwater. It is part of a vast network of trade and exchange. You are connected. When this hoard is found in 2009 by a man with a metal detector, it will be the archaeological equivalent of finding a lost library of epic poems. It will rewrite the history of Anglo-Saxon England. It shows that Mercia, a kingdom often overshadowed by its neighbors Northumbria and Wessex, was a major European power capable of fielding armies and commanding immense wealth. The sheer quality and quantity of the craftsmanship will prove that the Dark Ages were anything but. This was a time of sophisticated artistry, complex symbolism, and brutal, beautiful warfare. The gold you are burying is not just treasure. It is evidence. It is a testament to an age that was not dark, but gleaming with the fierce, intricate, and violent light of a warrior culture at its zenith. You pat down the last of the earth, doing your best to conceal the spot. You look around one last time at the empty field, take a deep breath of the cold night air, and walk away, leaving a puzzle for the future to solve. Let us now journey across the North Sea to a bustling island in the heart of the Baltic. The salt spray is on your face, and the air is filled with the cacophony. A dozen different languages are in Visby, on the Swedish island of Gotland, sometime in the 11th century. This is a Viking-era trading hub, a crossroads of the world where Norsemen, Rus, Arabs, and Franks meet to trade furs, amber, silver, and slaves. The city is a riot of sights and sounds, but you are not in the noisy marketplace. You are in a quiet workshop. Dust motes dance in the shaft of sunlight that cuts through the dim interior, and you are performing a kind of magic. In your hands, you hold a small, perfectly clear, lentil-shaped object. It is a piece of rock crystal, ground and polished, with a precision that seems impossible. You hold it over a piece of parchment inscribed with tiny runes. As you look through the crystal, the runes leap out, magnified and perfectly clear. What you have created is a lens, not just any lens. This is anispheric lens, a type of lens with a complex surface profile that minimizes distortion. According to the standard history of science, the mathematical principles for creating such a lens wouldn't be understood until the 1600s by thinkers like René Descartes. Yet here you are, a Viking Age craftsman, holding one in your hand 500 years ahead of schedule. You are part of a long tradition. Your people, the Gotlanders, have been master craftsmen for generations. You work with rock crystal, a difficult and unforgiving material. You have to find a flawless piece, then carefully grind it down using sand and water, gradually shaping it. The final polishing is done with a finer abrasive, perhaps powdered garnet, until the surface is as smooth as still water. It's a process that takes immense patience and an intuitive, profound understanding of optics. You don't have the mathematical formulas. You have something else, generations of accumulated skill, a master's eye, and a feel for the material that cannot be taught from a book. What are these lenses for? That is another mystery. Some are set in silver frames, clearly intended to be worn as pendants or ornaments. Perhaps they are simply beautiful objects, symbols of wealth and status. Rock crystal was believed to have magical properties. to be a form of solidified ice with the power to heal. But some of them, like the one you hold, are of such high optical quality that they must have had a practical purpose. You might be a far-sighted old merchant using this lens to read your ledgers and contracts. Or you could be a jeweler or a scribe using it to do fine, detailed work that would be impossible with the naked eye. This little piece of polished quartz is a tool of immense power. It extends the working life of a skilled artisan by years, perhaps decades. There is another possibility, one that is even more astonishing. You pick up another, larger lens. You take it outside and hold it up to the sun. You carefully adjust its position over a small pile of dried tinder. A tiny, intensely bright point of light appears on the wood. A wisp of smoke begins to rise, then another, and suddenly a small flame flickers into existence. You have created fire. In a world of flint and steel, this is a fast, reliable, almost miraculous way to start a fire. For a Viking sailor on a damp ship, it would be an invaluable tool. But the most tantalizing thought, the one that is almost too fantastic to consider, is what happens when you combine them. Could you put one lens in front of another, creating a simple telescope? Could you have stood on the walls of Visby and watched distant ships approach long before they were visible to anyone else? The archaeological record is silent on this point, but the possibility hangs in the air, shimmering like heat waves. When archaeologists discovered a cache of these lenses in the 1990s, excavated from Viking-era hoards on Gotland, the scientific community was baffled. They were too perfect, they were too advanced, they didn't fit the narrative of a primitive Viking age. Some were so well made they rival the quality of modern lenses. They were dubbed the Visby lenses, and they remain a beautiful anomaly. They are proof that our ancestors were not just warriors and raiders. They were also scientists, engineers, and artists of the highest caliber. You, the anonymous craftsman in your dusty workshop, were part of a technological tradition that was centuries ahead of its time. You were shaping light itself, bending it to your will, and creating small, perfect windows that allowed people to see the world in a new way. Your legacy is a quiet challenge to our own arrogance, a reminder that the past is full of forgotten genius, and that a small piece of polished stone can be enough to change everything we think we know. For our final journey, we must jump forward in time again to the very end of the medieval period. The world is on the cusp of a new age, but the old ways are dying hard and violently. The year is 1485. The place is a muddy, chaotic field in the heart of England. And tonight, you are a king. Your name is Richard III. And you are about to die. The crown on your helmet feels heavy, a crushing weight of responsibility and betrayal. The Wars of the Roses, the brutal 30-year dynastic struggle between the houses of York and Lancaster, is about to reach its bloody climax at the Battle of Bosworth Field. The historical narrative, written by your enemies, the Tudors, will paint you as a monster, deformed, hunchbacked tyrant who murdered his own nephews to seize the throne. William Shakespeare, writing over a century later, will solidify this image, creating one of literature's most compelling villains. For 500 years, that will be your story, a caricature of evil. But archaeology, the patient science of dirt and bones, will eventually give you a chance to offer a rebuttal. Right now, though, all you can think about is survival. Your army is in disarray. Key allies have betrayed you, switching sides at the crucial moment. You see the banner of your rival, Henry Tudor, across the field. He is relatively unguarded. In a moment of breathtaking, desperate courage, you decide to end this war yourself. You gather your loyal household knights and lead a final, frantic cavalry charge directly at Henry. For a moment it looks like it might work. You cut down Henry's standard-bearer with your own hand. You are within a sword's length of your enemy, a victory away from changing the entire course of English history. And then it all goes wrong. Sir William Stanley, one of the betrayers, finally commits his forces, and his thousands of fresh troops slam into your small, exhausted retinue. You are surrounded, overwhelmed. You lose your horse, bogged down in the marshy ground. You are fighting on foot, the mud sucking at your boots, Your armor a suffocating metal cage. You hear the shouts, "Treason! Treason!" You are a king, but here in the mud and blood, you're just a man fighting for his life. The blows rain down, one to the head, slicing through your helmet, another to the back. The pain is immense, but the adrenaline keeps you going. You refuse to flee. You are a king, and you will die a king. Your body will be stripped naked, slung over a horse like a slaughtered hog, and taken to the nearby town of Leicester. It will be put on public display for 2 days to prove that you are truly dead, that the Yorkist cause is finished. Then you will be unceremoniously buried in the choir of a Franciscan friary known as Grey Friars. Within 50 years, the friary will be destroyed during the Reformation. The exact location of your grave will be lost to time. You will become a myth, or final resting place, a historical cold case, rumored to be under a car park, a pub, or at the bottom of the River Soar. Then, in 2012, everything changes. Archaeologists, following a trail of historical maps and sheer determination, begin digging in a city council car park in Leicester. On the very first day, they find a skeleton, a male with a severe curvature of the spine and battle injuries. It is you. The scientific analysis of your remains is a stunning vindication. The skeleton shows you had severe scoliosis, a sideways curvature of the spine. It would have made one of your shoulders appear higher than the other. But it was not the disfiguring hunchback of Tudor propaganda. You were not a poisonous bunchback toad. You were a man with a medical condition who was still a formidable warrior. The bones tell the story of your last moments with chilling precision. They find 10 distinct injuries sustained at or near the time of death. 8 of them are to your skull. You are not wearing a helmet for the final blow, suggesting it was hacked off or lost in the fray. One wound is a slice from a sword that shaved off a piece of bone at the back of your head. Another is a puncture from a polearm, like a halberd, that went straight through your skull. These were the fatal blows, but they also found other injuries, ones that were likely inflicted after you were dead. A stab wound to the buttock, a deep cut to a rib from behind. These were not battle wounds, they were humiliation injuries. Acts of contempt performed on the dead body of a hated enemy. The archaeology confirms the brutal accounts of the chroniclers. It gives a voice to your bones, and they scream the truth of your violent end. The discovery of your skeleton under that car park was a global sensation. It was a moment where science reached back across 5 centuries and touched a king. It allowed us to replace the monster of myth with the man of bone, a man with scoliosis who led a cavalry charge, a king who died fighting. Your remains didn't answer the question of what happened to your nephews, the princes in the tower, but they did prove one thing beyond all doubt. History is not always what it seems. It is a story told by the winners, and sometimes it takes 527 years. A team of dedicated archaeologists and a hole in a car park to finally hear the other side of the tale. As our journey through these 5 incredible windows into the medieval world concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the stone-wrought historian, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. And indeed, the earth itself is a vast library, its pages not bound in leather and ink, but in layers of soil, stone, and the silent detritus of countless generations. Every spadeful of earth, every delicate brushstroke, peels back another chapter, revealing not just objects, but the very essence of human endeavor, fear, love, and ambition. These are not merely historical facts we unearth, but the vibrant, pulsating heartbeats of those who walked before us, their triumphs and struggles echoing through the millennia. The true beauty of archaeology lies not just in the grand unveiling of a lost city or a glittering treasure, but in the meticulous, often painstaking patience required to listen to the whispers of the past. It is in the fragments of pottery that tell of daily meals, the worn threshold of a doorway that speaks of countless comings and goings, the faint discoloration in the soil that marks the ghost of a long-vanished wooden post. Each piece, however small, is a word in a sentence, a note in a symphony that, when carefully pieced together, begins to sing the forgotten songs of our shared ancestry. It is a slow, meditative dance with time, where silence is often the most profound orator and darkness the greatest preserver. For the stone-wrought historian, the sleep is not one of inactivity, but of deep immersion, a dreamlike state where the boundaries between past and present blur and the voices from antiquity become clear. It's a journey into the subconscious of humanity, a quest to understand, not just what happened, but why it mattered and how it shaped the world we inhabit today. Every artifact, every architectural remnant, every buried landscape is a portal, inviting us to step back, to witness, and to learn from the grand tapestry of human experience. These tales, once silenced by the march of time and the weight of earth, are not just waiting to be found. They are waiting to be understood, to be given new voice through our contemporary lens. Consider the simple act of walking through an ancient site, whether it be the colossal ruins of a Roman forum or the subtle undulations of a prehistoric burial mound. What you are witnessing is not merely decay, but resilience. You are treading upon the very ground where lives unfolded, where children played, where leaders decreed, where artisans crafted their masterpieces. The wind whispering through broken arches is the same wind that once carried the laughter and laments of its original inhabitants. The sun warming the ancient stones is the same sun that once illuminated their hopes and dreams. It is a profound connection, a tangible link that collapses the vast chasm of history into a single resonant moment. And this connection is vital in an increasingly fast-paced world. Archaeology offers us an anchor, a reminder of the cyclical nature of human existence, of our enduring capacity for creativity, destruction, and adaptation. It teaches us humility, showing us the rise and fall of empires, the transience of power, and the enduring power of the human spirit. It also teaches us empathy, allowing us to glimpse the universal struggles and joys that bind us all, regardless of the era or culture. When we unearth a simple child's toy from a Roman villa or a carefully preserved piece of ancient bread from Pompeii, we are not just looking at relics. We are looking at reflections of ourselves, our own children, our own hunger. The pursuit of these stories is an endless one, for the earth holds an almost infinite number of secrets. Each season of fieldwork brings new questions, new challenges, and often unexpected revelations that force us to reevaluate what we thought we knew. The narrative of human history is not fixed. It is a living, breathing entity, constantly being revised and enriched by the patient work of archaeologists, historians, and scientists. We are but temporary custodians of these narratives, entrusted with the task of uncovering them, interpreting them, and sharing them responsibly with the world. So, as the stone-wrought historian continues to dream beneath the ancient soils, always listening for the faintest echoes, I urge you to cultivate your own sense of archaeological wonder. Look closer at the old buildings in your town. Imagine the lives lived within their walls. Consider the path you walk upon, what might lie just a few feet beneath its surface. The human story is not confined to textbooks. It is woven into the very fabric of our landscapes, our communities, and even our own backyards. All it requires is a curious mind, a willingness to observe, and the patience to listen. For every buried city we excavate, for every forgotten tomb we meticulously catalog, there are 1,000 more layers of human experience yet to be touched by the archaeologist's trowel. These are the untold sagas, the silent testaments to human ingenuity and resilience, waiting for the precise moment, the right set of eyes, and the dedicated hands to bring them back into the light. This ongoing dialogue with the past ensures that history is never truly static, never truly finished, but always a vibrant, evolving conversation, constantly revealing new facets of what it means to be human. It's an invitation to journey not just through space, but through time, connecting us irrevocably to the grand, unfolding drama of our collective heritage. And as long as there is ground beneath our feet, there will always be another story waiting to awaken from its long slumber. Until next time, keep digging, keep dreaming, and keep listening to the ancient whispers. Caesar's Ghost Rider, surviving a day in Rome's deadliest job. When you think of an ancient Roman scribe, what picture pops into your head? Probably some stooped anonymous fellow with an ink-stained tunic, quietly scratching away in a dusty corner, about as historically significant as a background extra in a sword and sandal epic. He's the guy who gets a parchment scroll shoved in his face with a gruff "take this down," and he just does. He's a function, a tool, a human word processor with bad posture and an even worse salary. We see them as the meek, silent witnesses to history, utterly powerless and entirely forgettable. This image, this comfortable little stereotype of the passive clerk, is a masterpiece of historical misunderstanding. It's like thinking the person who has the password to every nuclear launch code is just an IT guy. The man who takes dictation from the most powerful person in the world isn't merely a secretary. He's a vault. He holds the keys to military campaigns, the details of illicit affairs, the names on secret death lists, and the first draft of every law that will shape civilization. He knows who is in favor, who is on their way out, and whose carefully constructed reputation is a complete lie. In a world of daggers hidden in togas, this quiet man in the corner is holding a weapon far more potent than sharpened steel: information. He wasn't just taking notes, he was one of the most dangerous men in Rome. Tonight, you are that man. Your name is Tiro Noenus, and you are the personal amanuensis, the private secretary to Julius Caesar. It is the 11th day of Martius, in the year 710 ab urbe condita, or as you've heard some provincials call it, 44 BCE. Caesar has just been declared dictator in perpetuity, a title that sounds impressive, and, to many, terrifyingly permanent. Your office is wherever he is. Your pen is his voice, and your memory is his hard drive. And your most important daily task, beyond accurately transcribing his genius, is navigating the viper's nest of Roman politics without getting bitten, or worse, prescribed, because you know all the secrets. And in this city, knowledge doesn't just mean power. It means you're a target. The proof of your life, the tangible receipts of your high-stakes profession, are deceptively simple. Archaeologists have unearthed them from the volcanic ash of Herculaneum and the waterlogged soil near Hadrian's Wall. They find a small bronze or iron tool shaped like a pencil, with a pointed end for writing and a flat, spade-like end for erasing. This is your stylus. They find it alongside hinged wooden blocks, their insides hollowed out and filled with blackened beeswax. This is your tabula serrata, your wax tablet, the reusable notebook of the ancient world. When a set like this was found perfectly preserved, it was the ancient equivalent of finding a CEO's laptop, fully charged and with no password. These artifacts aren't just writing implements. They are the physical evidence of a life spent capturing fleeting words of immense consequence, of drafting history one careful stylus stroke at a time, and of holding the power to erase it all with a flick of the wrist. This discovery, made in countless sites across the Roman world, reveals something extraordinary about the true nature of power and information in the ancient world. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in Rome at the tipping point of its history. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about the man behind the man. The first thing you notice when you wake up is the silence. It's a specific kind of quiet, the pre-dawn hush of a city holding its breath. In a few hours, Rome will be a roaring beast of cartwheels on stone, merchants shouting, and the endless shuffling footsteps of a million souls. But for now, in the cool air of your modest sleeping chamber, there is only the distant crow of a rooster and the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. You are a freedman, born a slave in Caesar's household. Your aptitude with Greek and your flawless Latin earned you not just your freedom, but a position of unparalleled trust. Your manumission was signed by Caesar himself, a fact that serves as both your shield and your brand. You live in a small but respectable domus on the slope of the Suburran Hill, a significant step up from the chaotic, fire-prone apartment blocks, the insulae, where most of Rome's populace is crammed. Still, it's a world away from the sprawling villas of the patricians you serve. Your home is a statement of your status, comfortable, but not presumptuous. You are Caesar's man, and you must look the part, but never in a way that suggests you are getting rich off the connection. That's how you end up on a list. And you know better than anyone what happens to people on those lists. You rise from your simple wooden bed, the wool blankets feeling rough against your skin. You don't have the luxury of Egyptian cotton. The floor is cool mosaic, simple geometric patterns, not the elaborate mythological scenes favored by the wealthy. You pour water from a clay jug into a basin and splash it on your face. The water is fresh, wrought by the city's magnificent aqueducts, a daily miracle you never take for granted. You are, in every way, a product of this city, its engineering, its politics, its boundless opportunities, and its lethal dangers. Dressing is a ritual, a simple linen undertunic first, then the main event, the toga. As a full Roman citizen, a status Caesar himself granted you, you are entitled and expected to wear it. It's a ridiculous garment, really. A massive semicircle of heavy off-white wool that requires a certain gymnastic talent to drape correctly. It's impractical, it's hot, and it's designed to do one thing perfectly: restrict you from doing any kind of manual labor. The toga is a walking, wearable declaration that you do not work with your hands, you work with your mind. Your slave, a quiet young Briton named Llewellyn you bought last year, helps you get the folds just right. He is competent and unobtrusive, which is exactly what you require. You can't afford to have idle gossip leaving your house. Breakfast is a piece of bread dipped in wine, with a few olives and a sliver of cheese. It's eaten standing up quickly. The day is already pressing in. Before you leave, you check your tools. You have a capsa, a cylindrical leather case for carrying scrolls. Inside, you have fresh papyrus from Alexandria, a small stone palette for mixing ink, a reed pen, and a vial of fatramentum. Your ink, a mix of soot, water, and gum arabic. It smells earthy and slightly acrid, but for today's primary work, you'll be using your wax tablets. You take 2 diptychs, each a pair of hinged wooden blocks. You run your finger over the beeswax surface. It's smooth, dark, and ready. It feels cool and solid, a blank slate, waiting for the secrets of the Republic or what's left of it. Your walk to the Forum is a daily immersion in the sensory overload that is Rome. As you step out of your door, the smells hit you first. Baking bread from the Pistrina down the street, the sharp tang of garlic and herbs from a cook shop, and the ever-present underlying stench of a million people living in close quarters. The streets are narrow and winding, paved with large, uneven stones that have been grooved by centuries of iron-rimmed wheels. The dawn light is just beginning to slice between the tall apartment buildings, many of which lean at precarious angles, their wooden balconies jutting out over the street. You walk with purpose. Your pace is brisk. You are not a man who lingers. As you descend towards the valley of the Forum, the crowd thickens. You see merchants setting up their stalls, slaves hauling produce, and other men in togas, hurrying to their morning appointments. They recognize you. You feel their eyes on you. A nod here, a slight bow there. They are not greeting you, Tyrannoanus, the former slave. They are acknowledging the proximity to power you represent. You are a walking shadow of Caesar, and in this city, even the shadow of a great man commands respect and fear. A group of senators passes you. Their conversation drops to a whisper as you draw near. You catch a name, Cassius. You offer a bland, neutral nod in their direction. They return it with expressions that are just a little too polished, a little too friendly. It's like watching actors on a stage, all of them playing the part of loyal senator, while you know for a fact that the script they're reading in private is very different. You have recorded Caesar's dismissive comments about them. You know he finds their flattery tedious, and their veiled opposition cowardly, and they must suspect you know. Every interaction is a delicate dance, a test of your composure. Your face must remain a mask of professional courtesy. Inside you are a catalog of their slights, their debts, and their simmering resentments. You just have to hope they don't decide to close your account permanently. The Forum Romanum opens up before you, a sprawling expanse of marble and travertine, the heart of the known world. It's already a hive of activity. Lawyers are arguing cases in the open air, their voices echoing off the colonnades. Money changers clink coins at their tables. Priests are performing sacrifices at the Temple of Vesta. It is the grand stage of Roman life, and you have a backstage pass. Your destination is the Basilica Julia, the massive public building initiated by Caesar himself, which serves as a courthouse, a commercial center, and a general meeting place. It is, for all intents and purposes, your morning office. You find a relatively quiet alcove, a space understood to be yours. Here, you are the gatekeeper. For the next 2 hours, you will feel the relentless stream of petitioners, messengers, and political hopefuls, all desperate for a moment of Caesar's time. It is a master class in diplomacy and deflection. A grizzled legionary veteran wants to petition Caesar about his promised land grant. You take his name and promise to pass it along. Knowing Caesar has already delegated this to a commission, a tax farmer from Syria has a complaint about a provincial governor. You direct him to the appropriate magistrate, saving Caesar the headache. Then you see him, Senator Flavius Geminius, a portly man with a perpetually worried expression and a toga that always seems to be slipping off his shoulder. He is your recurring nightmare, a man whose ambition is matched only by his complete lack of self-awareness. He has a brilliant idea for a new aqueduct that he needs to share with Caesar personally. This is the 4th time this week. Tiro, my friend. He booms, clapping you on the shoulder with a familiarity you despise. A moment, if you please. I have refined my proposal. The engineering is flawless. You give him the thinnest of smiles, Senator. The dictator's schedule is formidable. He is preparing for the Parthian campaign, perhaps a written summary. No, this requires his personal attention. The genius of it is in the details. Just 5 minutes of his time. You know Caesar would rather spend 5 minutes wrestling a crocodile than listen to Flavius drone on about water pressure. Your job is to say no without offending a man who, while useless, still has a vote in the Senate. It's a delicate art. I will see what can be done, Senator, you say. A phrase that is the Roman equivalent of, I'll forward your email to the appropriate department. He beams, satisfied, and shuffles off. You make a mental note to lose his request somewhere between the Basilica and Caesar's study. It is a small, necessary act of administrative warfare. The real challenge is sorting the wheat from the chaff. A coded message arrives from Decimus Brutus in Gaul. This is important. It goes into a specific fold of your toga. A request for funds from the keepers of the public games. This can wait. A scroll from Cicero, full of flowery praise for Caesar that reads like a hostage note. You have to read it, summarize it, and present its contents to a man who has complete and utter contempt for its author. Caesar once joked that he would rather have Antony's drunken honesty than Cicero's sober hypocrisy. You, of course, recorded that joke on a wax tablet and then immediately erased it, Some things are too dangerous even for a temporary record. Your morning is a frantic triage of the Roman world's problems, all flowing towards one man. And you are the dam. You absorb the pressure, redirect the flow, and only let through what is absolutely essential. By the time the sun is high in the sky, you have a curated collection of crises and requests for Caesar to review. You gather your tablets and scrolls, give a final dismissive glance towards Senator Flavius, who is still lurking hopefully by a pillar, and begin the short walk to the Domus Publica, Caesar's official residence, a Pontifex Maximus, situated right on the edge of the Forum. The easy part of your day is over. Now you have to face the man himself. Entering the Domus Publica is like stepping from a raging river into a deep, quiet pool. The noise of the Forum fades, replaced by the hush of efficiency in a large, well-run household. Slaves move silently through the corridors. Guards, loyal veterans from the Gallic Wars, stand sentinel at every doorway. Their faces are impassive, but their eyes miss nothing. They know you, and they nod as you pass. You are part of the inner machinery, one of them in a different kind of uniform. You are shown into Caesar's private study, his tablinum. The room is not as opulent as you might expect. The walls are adorned with maps of Gaul, of Egypt, of Hispania, and a large, partially speculative one of Parthia. There are shelves filled with scrolls, Greek philosophy, histories of Alexander, military manuals. It is the room of a scholar and a general, not a king. The only true luxury is the light, which streams in from a small private peristyle garden. The sound of a bubbling fountain provides a gentle, constant background noise. And there he is, Gaius Julius Caesar. He is not the man of the statues, the idealized marble figure with the heroic jawline. He is 55 years old, and the decade of brutal campaigning in Gaul has left its mark. His face is thin and lined. His hairline is famously receding, a source of great personal vanity that he hides with his laurel wreath. But his eyes are as sharp and intelligent as ever. They are black, penetrating, and right now they are tired. He is seated at a large wooden desk, rubbing his temples. He suffers from what he calls a falling sickness, and you have seen him struck by seizures, a terrifying vulnerability that is one of the state's most closely guarded secrets. "Tiro," he says, his voice raspy. He doesn't look up. "Report. This is the moment where your value is proven. You don't hand him a stack of scrolls. You are his filter, his executive summary. You begin, your voice calm and even." General Decimus, Brutus reports that the legions in Gaul are restless but loyal. He requests clarification on their deployment for the upcoming campaign. You pause. Caesar grunts, a signal to continue. The grain dole distribution was successful yesterday. No riots. The public works on the Forum Iulia are on schedule, but the contractor complains about the cost of marble from Carrara. You continue rattling off the morning's intelligence, a verbal briefing that is precise and efficient. You know what he needs to know, and you know what he considers noise. "And Cicero?" Caesar asks, a hint of amusement in his voice. "He still hasn't looked at you." A scroll, dictator, filled with praise for your clemency and wisdom. He likens your return to Rome to the sun dispelling the darkness. Caesar finally looks up, and a dry, cynical smile plays on his lips. He lays it on thick, doesn't he? He fears I'll have him killed. He thinks flattery is a shield. He waves a dismissive hand. The old fool is harmless. What else? You present the petition from the legionary veteran. Caesar's expression changes. The weariness is replaced by a flash of the commander he once was. "The man from the 10th, see to it they get their land. I promise them, tell the commission to move faster. I will not have my veterans begging in the Forum. Yes, dictator, you make a swift note on your wax tablet, the stylus cutting silently through the wax, the sharp point for writing, the flat end for erasing. A simple tool for a complicated job. Now begins the real work, dictation. Caesar pushes himself up and begins to pace the room, his hands clasped behind his back. The words begin to flow, and you must catch them. It is like trying to bottle lightning. First, a letter to his agents in Alexandria. He is arranging for the transport of a giraffe for his next triumph. It's a bizarre, almost surreal detail amidst the high-stakes politics. You write it down without betraying a flicker of surprise. A giraffe. Of course, it's a symbol of his reach, his conquest of the exotic, a piece of political theater. Then his tone shifts. The pacing stops. He stares at the map of Parthia. To the Senate he begins, and his voice takes on a formal, resonant quality. He's no longer Caesar the man. He is Caesar the dictator. He lays out his justification for the upcoming war, revenge for Crassus, the glory of Rome, the security of the eastern frontier. It is a masterpiece of rhetoric, and you are its first audience. Your stylus flies across the wax, capturing every carefully chosen word, every calculated phrase. You are using a form of shorthand, a system of abbreviations and symbols you developed yourself to keep up with the speed of his thoughts. Later, you will transcribe it beautifully onto a papyrus scroll, the official version for the public record. But here, in this room, it is just raw data, the source code of power. He dictates for over an hour, memos to provincial governors, replies to allied kings, and then a personal letter. To my dearest, he begins, and then hesitates. He means Cleopatra, but he cannot say her name in a letter that could be intercepted. He settles on a coded phrase you both understand. The letter is surprisingly tender, a strange mix of political strategy for her kingdom and genuine affection. He asks about their son, Caesarion. It is a stunning moment of intimacy, a glimpse behind the curtain of the public man. You record it with the same dispassionate precision as you did the troop movements. Your job is not to feel, it is to record. But you are human, and you feel the immense weight of the secret you now carry. The dictator of Rome has a foreign-born son and heir. This single piece of information, if it got out, could shatter the fragile peace of the Republic. You press the stylus a little harder into the wax, the letters carved deep. The secret hidden in plain sight. Suddenly the door to the study bursts open. No one bursts in on Caesar. You instinctively place your hand over your wax tablet, shielding its contents. Mark Antony stands in the doorway, his face flushed with wine, even at this hour. He's dressed in a garish purple tunic, a military cloak slung over his shoulders. He is all charisma and brute force, the loyal hammer to Caesar's strategic genius. Caesar, Antony says, his voice a little too loud for the room. The talk in the city is getting worse. They're calling you king. I heard it in a tavern myself. Caesar's expression hardens. He despises the title. It's the one accusation that sticks, the one that truly threatens him. He tried to publicly refuse a diadem from Antony during the Lupercalia festival, but the stunt backfired. It just made people more suspicious. The people are children, Caesar says quietly, his voice dangerously low. They are scared of words. Some of the senators are more than scared, Antony pushes on. They are plotting. Brutus, Cassius, I don't trust their new smiles. Caesar waves a hand, a gesture of profound weariness. Brutus is my friend. His mother was the love of my youth. He is an idealist, not an assassin. He looks at Antony, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. You worry too much, Marcus. Pour yourself some wine. Antony looks like he wants to argue, but he knows that tone. The subject is closed. He grunts, pours himself a goblet of wine from a pitcher on a side table, and downs it in one go. The tension in the room is thick enough to taste. You have not moved. You have not written a word of this down. This is the other part of your job, knowing what not to record. The official record will show that Mark Antony arrived to discuss logistics for the Parthian campaign. The reality, the fear, the suspicion, the name of Brutus hanging in the air will exist only in your memory. It's a dangerous place to store such things. The meeting devolves into logistics, and you are back on solid ground taking notes. Troop levies, supply lines, naval support. It's a staggering undertaking, a war machine being set in motion by the will of one man. You listen, you write, and you try to ignore the slight tremor in your hand. The conversation you just witnessed has unsettled you deeply. Caesar's dismissal of the threat feels less like confidence and more like denial, a fatal blind spot. Or perhaps, you wonder, he is just too tired to fight on two fronts, Parthia abroad and the Senate at home. After Antony leaves, a cloud of wine fumes and anxious energy in his wake, the afternoon is dedicated to a more tedious but equally important task, sorting through Caesar's personal finances. He is a man of immense wealth, but also immense expenditures. He is funding public buildings, staging elaborate games for the people, and paying his vast network of political clients. It's a balancing act that would make your head spin. You sit with his financial managers, men who are to accounting what Caesar is to warfare. You are there to be his eyes and ears, to record his decisions, and to ensure his signature, or rather, a seal from his signet ring which you are entrusted to use, is affixed to the correct documents. You review contracts for grain shipments from Egypt, ledgers detailing loans made to struggling senators, a brilliant way to buy loyalty, and the astronomical budget for his upcoming triumph. In the middle of this mountain of numbers, you encounter a truly modern problem, a crisis of supplies. Not grain, not weapons, but papyrus. The finest quality papyrus, the stuff you use for official decrees, comes from a single workshop in Alexandria. The shipment is delayed. Piracy, the merchants claim. You suspect it's a form of political pressure from Cleopatra's court. This means you have to use the lower-grade Italian papyrus for some documents. It's coarser, the ink is more likely to bleed, and it feels cheap. It's an infuriating, mundane problem that has thrown a wrench into your meticulously organized system. For a moment you are not the keeper of state secrets, but an office manager dealing with a procurement issue. You spend a ridiculous amount of time dictating a strongly worded letter to the shipping agent in Ostia, a letter which Caesar will never see, but which makes you feel slightly better. It is a moment of banality in a day of high drama. You are helping to plan the invasion of an empire, but you are disproportionately annoyed by the quality of your stationery. It's a reminder that history is not just made of grand gestures, but of 1,000 tiny frustrating details. As the afternoon light begins to fade, casting long shadows across the study, a different kind of visitor arrives. Calpurnia, Caesar's wife. She is a dignified, quiet woman who carries a heavy sadness about her. Their marriage is a political alliance, devoid of the passion he reserves for others, but there is a bond of mutual respect. She enters the room, and you immediately make yourself as small as possible, gathering your tablets and preparing to leave. She speaks to Caesar in a low voice. You can't hear the words, but you see her face. It is etched with worry. She had a bad dream, a nightmare. You have heard the rumors in the household. She is becoming increasingly anxious, plagued by omens and portents. Caesar listens to her, his expression softening. He puts a hand on her arm and speaks to her reassuringly. In that moment, he's just a husband comforting his wife, a brief, fragile island of domesticity in a sea of politics. You slip out of the room, giving them their privacy. You feel like an intruder, a witness to something not meant for the public record. You wonder what she saw in her dream. You have a sick feeling in the pit of your stomach that it wasn't about the delayed papyrus shipment. Your workday is finally over. The sun is setting, painting the marble buildings of the Forum in shades of orange and pink. The crowds are thinning as people head home for their evening meal. Your own walk home is a mirror of the morning's journey, but the mood is different. The city is quieter, more subdued. The shadows in the alleyway seem deeper, more menacing. Every person you pass feels like a potential threat. Does that man loitering near the corner work for a senator Antony named? Is the fruit seller listening to your footsteps? The weight of the day's secrets presses down on you. You know about the Parthian campaign's secret strategy. You know the true state of Caesar's finances. You know about his Egyptian son. You know about Calpurnia's nightmares and Antony's fears. You are a walking, breathing liability. If any of Caesar's enemies wanted to truly hurt him, to unravel his plans, they wouldn't necessarily kill him. They might start with you. You reach your home, the familiar sight of your doorway a small comfort. Llewellyn takes your toga and brings you a simple dinner of vegetable stew and bread. You eat alone in your small dining room. The silence of your house is a welcome relief after the constant noise and pressure of the day. But it's also a breeding ground for your own anxieties. After dinner, you retreat to your personal study. It is a much smaller version of Caesar's, but it is your sanctuary. By the flickering light of an oil lamp, you begin the final, most crucial task of the day. You lay out your wax tablets, the faint scratches of your shorthand covering their dark surfaces. Now you must decide what gets transferred to a permanent papyrus scroll and what gets erased forever. The official Senate address on the Parthian War, that gets carefully, painstakingly transcribed. The letter to the Grain Dole Commission, transcribed. The memo about the cost of marble, transcribed. These are the bones of history, the official record that will be stored in the tabularium, the state archives. But what about the other things? The notes from Antony's outburst, the mention of Brutus. You hover your stylus over the wax. This is not for the public record. It is dangerous, inflammatory. But it is important. It is the truth. You make a decision. You take a separate, private scroll, one you keep hidden in a false bottom of a chest. On this, you begin to write a private journal, a record of the things you see and hear that cannot be officially recorded. It is an act of incredible risk. If this journal were ever found, it would be your death sentence. But you are a historian at heart. You feel a duty to record the truth, even if no one will ever read it. Then you turn to the tablet with the notes from the letter to Cleopatra. The words seem to glow in the lamplight. Caesarion, son of Caesar, the potential heir. This cannot be written down. Not anywhere. Not even in your secret journal. Some secrets are too heavy for paper. They must live and die in the mind alone. With the flat end of your stylus, the end made for erasing, you press down on the wax. You methodically, carefully, smooth over the surface. The heat from the friction and the pressure melts the wax just enough. The letters disappear. The secret is gone, returned to the blank, silent darkness of the tablet. It is as if it never existed. But it does. It exists inside you. You prepare for bed, your mind still racing. You've successfully navigated another day. You have balanced the books, placated the senators, recorded the plans for war, and protected the most volatile secrets of the state. You are good at your job, perhaps too good. You think of Caesar's weary face, his dismissal of Antony's warning, his confidence that feels less like strength and more like a fatal flaw. He has defeated every enemy on the battlefield, but you fear he is ignoring the ones in his own house, the ones who smile at him and call him friend. As you lie in the darkness, listening to the distant sounds of the city, you think about the power you wield. Not the power to command armies or make laws, but the power of the written word, the power to record, to frame, to omit, and to erase. In your hands, the history of this age is being shaped. It is a terrifying responsibility. You smooth the blanket over you, the wool a familiar, comforting weight. You close your eyes, but sleep does not come easily. You see the worried face of Calpurnia, the drunken anger of Antony, the false smile of Cassius, and the deep, tired eyes of Caesar. You are at the center of the web, and you can feel it beginning to tremble. You smooth over the wax on your tablet in your mind, erasing the day's notes, wondering if tomorrow you, or Caesar, will be the one who gets erased. As our journey through the day of Taro Noannis concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. The stylus and the wax tablet, simple tools from a bygone era, tell a story of immense pressure, of secrets kept and truths erased, and of the quiet, unseen figures who stood at the elbow of history, diligently taking notes. This is the stone-wrought historian, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. These tales aren't merely the grand sagas of kings and queens, the epic battles, or the rise and fall of empires, though those certainly form a vital part of the human narrative. More often, the most profound revelations spring from the most unassuming fragments, a shard of pottery bearing a fingerprint from millennia ago, a discarded tool hinting at a forgotten craft, the subtle stain of a long-vanished wooden post marking the corner of a prehistoric home. Each of these whispers a testament to lives lived, loves lost, and daily struggles overcome, contributing to a symphony of human experience that stretches back into the dim mists of time. Indeed, many of these histories have slumbered for epochs, undisturbed by the relentless march of surface civilization, preserving their secrets beneath layers of soil, silt, and forgotten intention. They are patient, these silent witnesses, waiting for the serendipitous moment, the meticulous hand, the inquiring mind that will gently brush away the dust of ages. The ground itself becomes a vast, multi-layered archive, each stratum a page, each artifact a word in a chronicle far grander and more intricate than any single author could ever compose. The challenge, and indeed the profound joy for the archaeologist, lies in learning to read this ancient script, to piece together the shattered sentences, and to ultimately give voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves. The archaeologist, in essence, is a medium, not in the spiritual sense, but as a bridge between the deep past and the urgent present. We don't simply unearth objects. We strive to resurrect contexts, to reconstruct the fabric of existence from tantalizing clues. It requires more than just scientific rigor. It demands empathy, imagination, and a willingness to sit with uncertainty, to consider multiple possibilities, and to constantly refine our understanding as new evidence emerges. It's a dance between the empirical and the interpretive, where every hypothesis is rigorously tested, yet every interpretation acknowledges the inherent gaps in our knowledge. We become storytellers ourselves, responsible for weaving narratives that are both faithful to the evidence and compelling to contemporary minds, ensuring that the legacy of those who came before us is not merely preserved, but understood and appreciated. This sacred trust compels us to not only uncover, but to protect, to educate, and to inspire. Why do we feel this deep-seated pull to the past? Why do these dormant stories resonate so strongly within us? Perhaps it is because in the echoes of ancient lives, we find reflections of our own humanity. The universal themes of family, community, survival, innovation, belief, and loss transcend time and culture. A child's toy from Roman Britain, a Neolithic hearth where families gathered for warmth and sustenance, the intricate symbolism on an Iron Age brooch. These aren't just historical curiosities, they are powerful reminders of our shared lineage, connecting us to a vast tapestry of human ingenuity and resilience. They tell us that despite the vast differences in technology and societal structure, the core experiences of being human have remained remarkably consistent, offering both comfort and perspective in our often turbulent modern world. For every monumental site we unearth, countless others remain veiled, their tales still deeply embedded within the Earth's embrace. For every grand civilization brought to light, there are innumerable smaller communities, forgotten migrations, and personal histories that await their turn to speak. This humbling reality underscores the infinite nature of archaeological discovery. It reminds us that the past is not a finite resource to be depleted, but an ever-expanding universe of knowledge, constantly revealing new facets, challenging old assumptions and inviting fresh inquiries. The work is never finished. Each answer only illuminates more questions, propelling us further into the fascinating depths of human history. Your own imagination is a powerful tool in this grand exploration. You don't need a trowel or a permit to embark on your own mental excavations. Allow your curiosity to guide you as you ponder the ancient landscapes around you, envisioning the lives that unfolded there long before your time. Every old building, every natural landmark, every museum artifact holds a potential story, a whispered secret just waiting for your attention. So, as we draw this particular excavation to a close, remember that the ground beneath your feet is not merely inert soil. It is a vast, living library, rich with the echoes of vanished footsteps and the silent testimonies of forgotten dreams. It encourages us to look beyond the immediate, to cultivate patience, and to appreciate the profound interconnectedness of all human experience across time. The world is saturated with history, waiting for us to listen. Carry that sense of wonder with you, for the greatest discoveries often begin with the simplest act of looking closer and listening more intently. Until next time, keep digging into the mysteries that lie just beneath the surface of your world. Good night.